Good morning, everyone. My name is Rick Krause. I'm the president of the Cabarrus County and 19A Judicial District Bar Associations. I welcome you all to the program for the celebration of the 53rd anniversary of Law Day and the memorial service honoring those law enforcement officers of Cabarrus County who gave their lives in the line of duty. I'd like to make one correction to begin with. At the portion of the program of the bulletin that you received, we did Chief Smith a disservice. We called him Chief Davis. We apologize. I would also like to thank the person who really made the program responsible, and that's Captain Phil Patterson of the Sheriff's Office. And I would like to thank Phil for not catching this mistake I made in the program. But other than this, it is a delight to be here and a wonderful program honoring Law Day and those police officers of our county. I'd like to begin by asking for an invocation from the Associate Pastor of the Cold Springs United Methodist Church, and that is Mary Hatley.
Let us pray. Holy God of love and justice, we thank you that you give us grace. Yet we know that we are a people who fail. We are a people that need limits and rules, and we know too that there are some among us who too often push those limits and ignore the rules. And we as a people must be governed. Thank you that in your mercy and in your grace, you give us wise men and women who work diligently to interpret and to uphold the laws of our land. You give us leaders that dare to serve and to seek to govern us in spite of ourselves. You bless our land and hear the cry of injustice. You raise up women and men who seek to serve their neighbor, who seek to administer justice and mercy, who seek to help victims and who work for ways of restitution, who seek to create means of mediation and reconciliation for families. Thank you that through the laws and courts of our land, criminals are brought to justice, and that you lead all those in authority, that they will be open to your guidance. Be with all who gather during this time of remembrance, Almighty God, we pray. Amen.
If everyone would please rise for the presentation of colors by the Concord Police Department, immediately followed by our national anthem sung by Maggie and Emma Teague.
Guard. Halt. Left. Face. Prepare post. Post. Present. Arms.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, their bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Arms. Forward, march.
Thank you. If everyone can please have a seat. At this time, I would like to introduce the District Attorney for Cabarrus County and Judicial District 19A, Roxanne Vandenkoven, who will recognize guests of honor here at the program.
Thank you. It's my privilege to participate in our annual Law Day and recognize those law enforcement officers and judicial officials who participate in our great county of Cabarrus. I would like to recognize some of the folks that are here today that have given much of their career to law enforcement or the court system. And I'll start with some of our local chiefs and sheriff. Of course, over here to my left is Sheriff Brad Riley. First Sergeant Stokes, I saw in the back with Highway Patrol. Thank you for being here. We have the Chief of Kannapolis Police, Woody Chavis, in the back over here. Current Chief of Police, Guy Smith, with the Concord Police Department. And recently retired former Chief, Merle Hamilton, with the Concord Police Department. We also have District Court judges over here to my right, Brent Cloninger and Judge Martin McGee. Regrettably, Judge Hamby and Judge Johnson could not be here. I know that there are a number of courts that are going on. Oh, I see Judge Hamby in the back. He must have taken an earlier recess. Thank you, Judge Hamby, for being here. We also have Adrian Cox from the Mount Pleasant Town. The Mount Pleasant Town Administrator is here. Al Brown, Mayor Pro Tem. I believe I saw him over here. Randy Cawthon, Councilman from Kannapolis. Lamar Barrier, Councilman in Concord. I saw Lamar here. Janice Daniel Ortiz from the family of Jackie Daniel is here. Thank you for being here today. Dave Phillips, Councilman in Concord, also here. Over here to my right, thank you. Tim Furr from the Board of Education in the back. Michael Reep Smith, Harrisburg Town Manager. We have John Sweat from the City Council for Concord, back there. Warren Chapman, the Mount Pleasant Town Commissioner. Carolyn Carpenter, over here to my right, from the County Commission here in Cabarrus, as well as Chris Meesmer seated beside her. We have Peter Bullock, the North Carolina State Bar and District Bar Administrator. I think Jay White is here somewhere in the back over here, also from the County Commission. Our Clerk of Court, Bill Baggs, over here to my left. And I want to send regrets from our resident Superior Court Judge Spainhour. He could not be here today. His schedule is extremely busy, and I believe he had commitments in Raleigh that he could not break away from. He sends his regrets. So thank you to our distinguished guests for being here. We look forward to this annual celebration every year, and thank you for participating with us this year.
Each year, the Bar Association of Cabarrus County presents the Liberty Bell Award. This year's recipient, I'm not going to name yet, but I am going to introduce his son, Mark Davis, who is a police officer with the Concord Police Department, and who I am quite pleased that he agreed to do this presentation. Thank you.
All right, and thank you, Mr. Krause. Ladies and gentlemen, just to start with, I'm actually very honored to be the one presenting this award, the Liberty Bell Award. It's given each year from the Cabarrus County Bar Association to an attorney that has promoted a better understanding of law, encouraged a greater respect for law and the courts, simulated a sense of civic responsibility, and has also contributed to the good government within the community. This year's recipient is my father, the Honorable Judge James C. Davis. For those that know Judge Davis also know there's no way for me to stand up here and express all of his lifelong accomplishments and undertakings. The best way I can think of honoring him is to tell everyone just a few points about his life, some of which you may not be aware of. Judge Davis was born July 30th, 1929, to Robert and May Davis in China Grove, 1929 being that start of the Great Depression. He is the second of three sons. He worked in Cannon Mills' number 2 weave room. That's where he started his formal work, on third shift. Third shift was very important to him. That is one place where he met my mother, who later got married to him in October 1953. The other big reason he liked third shift, at the mill, he had buddies that would help him out while he slept at work, so he could attend college during the daytime. Now, keep in mind, back then, the mill, for any of you that kind of know the mill in Kannapolis, they didn't want their employees to become educated. They wanted you to be a lifelong mill worker. So, painfully so, working third shift, sleeping when he could, he was able to complete Catawba College and graduated in 1957. He went on to Wake Forest Law School, graduating in 1959. His work accomplishments, even prior to then, he began throwing newspapers as a child, worked shining shoes even though he didn't own his first pair of shoes until he was in college. He had to wear his hand-me-downs from his brother Bob. He worked as a volunteer fireman, a teacher, a solicitor, and district court judge, both in Rowan County, a representative to the North Carolina House. Later came to Concord for his first practice with attorneys Johnson and Llewellyn. Later opened another practice with himself, Mike Kuntz, and Clarence Horton. In 1976, he was appointed to the Superior Court by Governor Jim Hunt. During his tenure on the bench, he traveled across the state, becoming the second judge to ever hold court in all 100 counties of our glorious state. Now, bear in mind, our state started in 1789, so that took 207 years for it to be accomplished for one judge to hold court in all 100 counties. With him being the second, the judge that finished just prior to him was just months ahead. As of today, there's only 4 judges that have completed that accomplishment. In February of 1996, he was honored by Governor Hunt for his prestigious service as a judge to the state of North Carolina and was awarded the Order of the Longleaf Pine. For those that don't know, the Order of the Longleaf Pine is among the most prestigious awards that can be given by the governor of our state. It's given to individuals who have a proven record of extraordinary service to the state and all of its citizens. January 2nd, 1998, Judge Davis decided to retire. Well, kind of. From 98 up until last year, he worked as an emergency judge. still serving the citizens of the state. Several times within the last couple of years, while holding and presiding over the bench, he did that out of his pocket. No pay was ever accepted. Based on the economy of the state, he did that out of the goodness of his heart. Prior to retiring, he had the honor of administering the oath of office to his predecessor and good friend, the Honorable Judge Erwin Spainhour. In addition to all of his career accomplishments for well over 5 decades, he is also a very devout Christian and has taught Sunday school for well over 50 years also. He's also been involved in numerous community organizations over his lifetime. Well, Mom and Dad have been married now for about 57 years. And without Mom, who knows, he may have stopped years ago and had continued his sleeping up there in the mill on 3rd shift. But now he's the father of 4, the grandfather of 7 children, and the great-grandfather of 3, with a 4th great-grandchild on the way in the fall. Dad has always had a stance on law, being firm but fair. On days when he was home from court, the family could tell when things that he was presiding over bothered him. It'd be very upsetting and would weigh on his mind at all times. So he wasn't the type of judge just to leave it when he left the courtroom. As for discipline, most of the time Dad would leave for court on a Sunday afternoon after church. Traveling out of town, he would return from work on Friday afternoon once he completed the work week. If there were issues at home to be dealt with, well, that left Mom. And Mom would always give us, especially if I did something wrong, well, you'll just deal with your dad when he gets home. Well, this would only leave me wondering for day and day until that Friday came. What happened on Friday? He would discuss it real short, brief, and tell you, we'll talk about that Saturday or Sunday. Well, that's what I call some major psychological pressure. I think most of the time I'd just rather him pull out the old belt and move on. Firm but fair. I call it thought justice. Makes one think about what they've done. I believe in his courtroom, he carried that practice also. I recall back during high school going to watch him in court here in Cabarrus County, to hear a defendant that was standing before him attempt to explain why he owed the state of North Carolina thousands of dollars and had never paid the state back in arrears. I could tell the man didn't have the money. I was young, but just based on all the excuses he was offering up, I knew that there was no way he could ever provide that money back to the state. However, since Dad had a heart, he listened to the man diligently, trying to explain how he thought he could get the money by Friday. And this was on a Tuesday. Court had just opened. Well, Dad told him that would be fine, that he better bring the money that he owed the state on Friday. And if he didn't, he needed to bring his toothbrush because he wasn't going back home. On Friday, well, you're right, the guy showed up with his toothbrush. Firm but fair. I'm sure that thought justice weighed on that man's mind just as much as it had on mine over the years. I'm sure there's several people in here today that know exactly what I'm talking about if you've ever sat in Judge Davis's courtroom. He's the kind of man that believes in everyone, gives them all the trust and attention that they deserve, and in all attempts to be fair to all mankind. Several times, Dad and I have talked over the years about different people that I've had to deal with in my profession and arrest. Strangely enough, a lot of those same people had come through his courtroom, or he represented when he was an attorney. My opinion was that person was a criminal. It was somebody I had to fight all the way to jail, tooth and nail. Dad's opinion, that same person, that they deserved the break, and they were always polite to him. Well, no wonder why. He's the judge. A little different. Of course they were polite to him. Well, Dad, if you would, step on up here. If I might, the Liberty Bell Award presented to you for all your commitment and service.
think I'm going to ruin that. You're wrong. Thanks a million. I appreciate it. God bless everyone.
Well, Mark, I have to say, I'm glad you didn't become a lawyer because you'd be a tough act to follow. Our next award, given every year, will be given by our sheriff, Brad Riley, and that is the Robert J. Urey Memorial Award.
Thank you and welcome. It is with great pleasure that I present this year's Robert Jackson Urey Memorial Award. This award is given each year to an outstanding Cabarrus County law enforcement officer with at least 20 years of experience, a person that exhibits many of the same characteristics that Robert Jackson Urey possessed. Lieutenant Robert Jackson Urey of the Cabarrus County Sheriff's Office was killed in the line of duty on May the 5th, 1972. He was a very dedicated and law enforcement professional that was killed doing what he did best, honorably protecting and serving the citizens of this county. Lieutenant Urey was 1 week shy of turning 50 years old and had served 18 years at the sheriff's office at that time. He had a commitment and dedication to the field of law enforcement like no other. So much of the law enforcement man that it influenced his daughter, Ann Urey Griggs, and I talked to Jim Griggs, her husband, this morning, who retired at the sheriff's office, and they were sorry that they couldn't be here today. They had prior commitment in Raleigh. But again, Jim also served as chief deputy and retired at the sheriff's office several years ago, and so their entire family was very involved in law enforcement. The Robert Jackson Urey Memorial Award was started by the late Jack Cranford, who was a local businessman, Post 51 in North Carolina, commander of the American Legion. The award is sponsored by Fifth Third Bank. Recipients are nominated by local law enforcement agencies and selected by the local bar association in conjunction with the local law enforcement memorial committee. The award represents many things, most notably an individual. It represents all the sacrifices and everything that law enforcement profession is designed to be, which is dedicated, loyal men and women that choose to put on the badge and pledge to place themselves in harm's way regardless of the consequences or the circumstances. All too often, that sacrifice cost them their lives. This year's recipient has demonstrated a true commitment to law enforcement and service to this community, which exemplifies exactly what Lieutenant Urey stood for. This year's recipient possesses many of the same qualities that made Lieutenant Urey successful in his time, such as deep devotion to family, deep devotion to the community, to his profession, and to his fellow man. This is the highest law enforcement award given in Cabarrus County, and I can't think of a greater award to receive for an individual in this community than this one. This year's recipient began his law enforcement career in 1983 with the Kannapolis Police Department. He is a graduate of South Rowan High School, a veteran police executive who performs a broad range of administrative and operational tasks on behalf of his department. He has consistently demonstrated his commitment to law enforcement and the desire and ability to do professional and responsible work. I continue to be impressed with his sense of duty, his strong work ethic, and his ability to collaborate with other agency components to achieve community goals. This recipient belongs to a generation of police officers who truly believe in the nobility of their cause and who freely dedicate themselves to the service of others. This gentleman has rose through the ranks at Kannapolis Police Department as he was promoted to sergeant in 1996, promoted to lieutenant in 2004, and promoted to his current position of captain in 2007. He currently oversees a complex array of agency operations, administrative tasks, and special projects. He has earned the respect of the local law enforcement community throughout the city, county, and state of North Carolina as considered a true professional law enforcement officer. He truly embodies the meaning of this award and certainly a fitting tribute to Lieutenant Robert Jackson Urey. I'm honored to present to you this year's award winner, Captain Chuck Adams. Congratulations, Chuck. And I'll read it to you. It says, Robert Urey Memorial Award presented to Captain Chuck Adams for outstanding contribution to the law enforcement profession, 2011. Congratulations. I'll turn it over to you if you want to say something.
Well, that wasn't expected, I'll tell you that. My granddaughter and grandson and my family, thank you. They've endured a lot, as have your family members. It means a lot. But I do want to say this. You men and women that lie in this room, I have great respect for you, and for your families and for your sacrifice. Just remember this. Micah chapter 6, verse 8 tells us what's required of us: to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. If we do that, men and women of law enforcement will never let anybody down in this community. Thank you.
Judge Davis, Sergeant Adams, on behalf of the community, thank you for your service that you've given us. And both of you are very deserving of these awards. It's really been an amazing last 7 days in Cabarrus County. Last Saturday, thousands of our citizens lined the highways of Cabarrus County to watch the procession of motorcycles escorting the return of the remains of Sergeant First Class Donnie Shue, who gave his life in the Vietnam War and whose remains were not found and returned. I think he died in 1969, almost a lifetime. Then on Sunday evening, we watched our president announce that Osama bin Laden had been brought to justice for the killing of thousands of United States citizens in New York, Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania, Yemen, and other parts of Africa. Then on Monday, the judges, the clerks, the probation officers, the police officers, and yes, even the lawyers returned to work to carry out the mundane tasks that make our system of justice work. I call it amazing, but it is something that is taken for granted by the citizens of the state and of our nation. We take it for granted that our system of justice exists. When you compare our system and the rights and privileges that we have that are constitutionally guaranteed, and if you compare them to other countries in this world, you will see how fortunate that we are. I'm proud to be a lawyer. And I'm proud to be a small part of the American system of justice. Today, we honor our system and what has been designated as Law Day. We also honor all those officers who are currently serving in law enforcement, who have previously served in law enforcement, and especially those who served in law enforcement and gave their lives in the line of duty. Another portion of our constitutional democracy is that we pass the laws that govern our society. Oftentimes, I have clients come to my office and are very disappointed when I tell them that whatever their problem is, there's not much I can do for them because the law just doesn't provide a remedy for them. And I often tell them that the answer to their problem may not be with the courts, it would be to change the law. And oftentimes it's the ordinary citizens who are the impetus for changes in our law. Today's speaker is one of those people who makes the laws of our land. I could tell you that today's speaker grew up in Biscoe, North Carolina, and attended East Montgomery High School and Wake Forest University. But I'm not going to tell you that because you probably already know it. I could tell you that he worked in the textile industry for 27 years before that industry died and went elsewhere, and that he then taught high school at East Montgomery for 7 years. You probably already know that too. I could tell you that he was elected to Congress in 2008 and serves on the House Armed Services Committee, the House Agricultural Committee, several other committees and subcommittees, where he is a strong voice for Americans buying American manufactured goods. But that isn't as important as the other things that he does day to day. I will tell you that he and 434 other members of the United States House of Representatives are the rubber that meets the road when it comes to ordinary citizens being heard in our federal government. These are the people who help the ordinary citizens deal with the giant bureaucracy that is our federal government. These are the people who help our ordinary citizens wade through the bureaucracy of the Veterans Administration or Social Security or FEMA or whatever other agencies they're dealing with and get frustrated because they can't find the right person to talk to. These are the people that answer their telephone, that actually meet their constituents without having to pay $10,000 for a plate of rubber chicken at a function. These are the people that come to functions like this to meet and honor the people that they serve. I will tell you that he is our representative of North Carolina's 8th Congressional District, and it is my proud joy and honor to introduce Larry Kissel.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for that introduction, Rick, and to Judge Davis and Captain Adams, and Captain, evidently you're known by Papa also. Congratulations on your honors today, and to Sheriff Riley and to the two police captains and former police captain Hamilton. Now, I asked if you were here today, Captain Hamilton, and they said they're not sure, they're not used to seeing you in a coat and tie. So they hadn't quite gotten used to seeing you out of uniform yet. It is a privilege to be here today. I've had the honor of being here before on these days. And when I was asked to speak today, it was sincerely, with a humble reply, I said yes, because this is the importance and significance of this day. It has not been lost on me from having been here before. Now, I have to also admit very quickly that the significance of how I view this day has also weighed on me as I prepared for this day and made me somewhat nervous. The first thing I should do is to tell you this is not my speech. This is here for another reason. It's also good to look out and see all of these people in front of me in uniforms. It kind of reminded me this morning as I saw everybody standing here of one of my colleagues in Congress that oftentimes if there's a group of us going somewhere, we'll get a police escort. And a friend of mine from New Mexico on those first trips, and we had several police cars in front of us, he said he's not used to seeing that many blue lights in front of him. So it's good to see all these uniforms in front of me today. One of the great, excuse me, what's that? One of the great privileges of this job is to be able to say thank you and offer congratulations, especially on days like today when we can say that and offer the congratulation and offer our thanks to those that serve. And that's what this day is all about, those that serve, but it's also additionally about those that have sacrificed. And not only the sacrifice in the memory of the ones who have lost their lives, but what was said earlier today about those families and individuals as they sacrifice as they go about serving us. As was said earlier, and some of you may have known anyway, I was a high school history teacher for the last 7 years. And my favorite course to teach was world history. I simply loved the stories of history. I loved knowing about how we came to be who we are, no matter where that might be within the world. I love to know about how customs came to be, how different ways of thinking came to be. And one of the areas that I would have my students to follow as we went, and we would study the history of transportation and maybe warfare and other things, but one of the things I asked them to track is how democracy came to be. And you can look back into history and you can see some of the early developments of democracy, maybe in Greece where there was an open democracy, or in Rome where the idea of a republic was established that our government is based upon today, where you elect an individual to represent you. And with that development of democracy is also the development of laws. And some of the first efforts made within the Justinian Code, Napoleonic codes. These are the efforts to make our ways of living codified within laws. We see the Magna Carta, we see the British effort toward democracy. We have the influence of the Bible and the history of the Jews and the history of Christians coming together. But the idea of democracy did not really take hold until the United States came to be. And the most fundamental aspect of our democracy is the rule of law. Without that, without understanding that there are consequences for what we do, the understanding of knowing what is right and what is wrong by our laws, and the consistency of having those laws enforced, and the rights within the laws are explained quite simply within our Constitution. And in this amazingly simple document that we give out, these little pamphlets in our offices everywhere, is what our nation is based upon. That we can go back to these articles of amendments and the articles themselves, and this is what our rule of law was based upon. Did we have it right to begin with? No. That's why we have 27 amendments. It's still a work in process, but this is where it all begins. You may be aware that in Congress this year, on one of the first days that we were in session for the 112th Congress, the Constitution was read from the floor. It was an amazing back and forth between members of Congress and altering between Democrats and Republicans, because on that day we really weren't members of a party. We were members of Congress representing the United States. And one of the most poignant times of that reading took place when Congressman John Lewis from Georgia a person that I had read about and taught about in history for his works in civil rights, that the only member of Congress, the only person in Washington that I asked for an introduction to before I felt I could talk to Congressman Lewis, because of his history of sacrifice and serving, and a truly remarkable gentleman. It was planned while all the readings back and forth were just however you showed up prior to this one moment. Congressman Lewis was allowed to read the 13th Amendment that did away with slavery. In that very emotional moment, the House stood, people in the gallery, both sides of the aisle, and applauded not only Congressman Lewis, they applauded the Constitution, they applauded this nation and what we stand for in rule of law. It is about democracy, it is about the Constitution, but we are also the light that shows to other parts of the world. I've had the privilege of 5 trips to Afghanistan to see for myself as much as I can, understand as much as I can what we are asking our troops to do, the challenges of that nation. The last trip over, which was earlier this year, was also a trip where we tried to emphasize the rule of law in Afghanistan. We met with their Supreme Court and we talked with these men as they tried to struggle with what will be their basis of code of laws to make their rulings. We met with policemen that are being trained to give that most fundamental safety net to the people, that the ability to be protected within their neighborhoods. And one of the most significant moments, one of the most thrilling moments for me, took place when I was able to sit down with female officers being trained in this male-dominated country. You don't talk to, a male, you do not talk to females. And to be able to sit with these ladies who were being trained to be policemen, who were withstanding the taunts of their neighbors just for the right to go and be a policeman. It was amazing. One of the ladies, 30 years old, 6 children, I asked her, I said, what do you want to do? She said, I want to be the first female police chief in Kabul. And I wish her the best. What a challenge. We went to a detainee center at Bagram Air Base, where the rule of law is applied to those people that are trying to do harm to our soldiers or to the people of Afghanistan, the Taliban. And we were allowed to witness the bringing forth of a prisoner as he was given his day in court. And I can't help but to have looked at a little bit of it with a sense of humor, because it reminded me a little bit of back when I was teaching high school, some of the excuses that maybe our high school students can come up with about how they got caught doing certain things. Well, this gentleman explained his actions as he just was an innocent farmer. He was out driving his tractor at night. When the Americans came and they're taught, he said, the Americans teach us, you go to the closest house when the Americans come. And it was just his sheer bad luck, the closest house happened to be a Taliban safe house. And imagine his surprise when he looked around, everybody there was Taliban, and gee, what am I doing here? And he was trying to convince the people there that of his innocence, and he did nothing wrong, all he did was what they told him to do. So this is a country that's struggling to find that rule of law. I also had the privilege last week to go to Israel, in a country that came together because of what happens when the rule of law fails, when the rule of law doesn't exist anymore. And this is how Israel came to be. And I went to the Holocaust Museum there and saw the personal histories of the tragedy, of the failure of rule of law. I went to a Holocaust presentation by children in one of the communities. I did not understand a word, but I understood all of the message of what can happen when the rule of law fails. And this is what the National Law Day is all about. It's about to celebrate those that bring us the rule of law, from everyone from the policemen to the administrators to the clerks to the judges to the defense lawyers to the prosecutors. Everyone who makes this work, today we offer you our congratulations. We recognize the sacrifices that you make, not only once again of the ones who have sacrificed with their lives, but also of the ones who sacrifice within the time away from family, the sacrifice of worrying, the sacrifice of the stress that comes with these jobs. When we go outside in a few minutes and we hear taps, I want you to pray for those that have made the ultimate sacrifice, and pray that we will not add to that list here in Cabarrus County. But we know the danger always exists, and we know that those names will be added elsewhere. And pray for the nation that we love so much and the opportunity to live under this rule of law, and that we may not take it for granted, because if the moment we take these freedoms for granted, the moment we are in danger of losing them. On September the 11th, 2001, as we all know, our nation was attacked. But more than the Twin Towers were attacked, more than the Pentagon was attacked, and the field in Pennsylvania where those brave people brought the plane down before it could attack wherever it was going. Our nation was attacked in the fundamental way of what we stand for. The democracy that we are, our way of living, that rule of law, it was attacked. And we saw a measure of justice this past week when our brave soldiers went in and took care of Osama bin Laden. This is what our nation is all about. We will stand strong as long as we recognize we have this democracy, we have the rule of law, and thank everyone here today for what you do to preserve that. It's truly fundamental to who we are. Now, what I brought this for today is we sometimes, that the rule of law is a little bit easier than the making of laws. And this was one of the laws that we make. It can get complicated. It can get frustrating. But it's the best that we have ever known, and we should always be thankful for that. Thank you all today for what you do, and God bless America.
At this time, the focus, in several respects, turns from the lawyers, the judges, the congressmen, the legislators, the senators, who make the law and who implement the law, to those who enforce the law by giving their lives in the line of duty. At this time, I'd like to introduce a fellow lawyer and brethren of the bar, John Lewis, who will do the presentation of roses honoring those law enforcement officers of Cabarrus County who died in the line of duty.
Law Day was established by President Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1958 as an opportunity for the people to gather and celebrate our great history of liberty, justice, and equality under the law. So we gather here today in the seat of our county's government, and we celebrate these enlightened precepts that launched the great American experiment. But that's not enough. It's not enough to sit here and think of the freedoms that we all share. On this day, it's not enough to just sit here and listen to speeches telling us how great our American system of justice is and how it's unparalleled in the history of the world. On this day, and in the presence of our most honored guests. It is not enough to sit here and observe the advances that we've made in social equity. On this day, we must do more. On this day, we must celebrate differently. For Law Day is not just a time to honor these amorphous ideals of liberty, justice, and equality. Truly, it's a time to honor those who have made these ideals a reality. It's a time to rededicate ourselves to these ideals in a world in which their value is ever diminishing. Today, it is my privilege to lead us in honoring those law enforcement officers who gave their lives in the line of duty, to honor those whom President Lincoln would have described as having given the last full measure of devotion. On behalf of myself and the people of Cabarrus County, I express my heartfelt gratitude for their service and ultimately their sacrifice. And I challenge everyone here today to recommit yourselves to those ideals for which they perished. As a token of our gratitude and as a symbol of our recommitment to those ideals, I would like to ask for all members of the families of our fallen heroes to please rise so that we may present them with a single white rose.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you to the families. At this portion of our program, we are going to go outside to the Law Enforcement Memorial, which is right off here to my left.
Honor guard, attain, hoop!
Let us pray. Help us, O God, to uphold the laws of justice set in place by our forefathers and foremothers, and by those who work today on so many levels to serve and to protect. And always help us to seek healing and to offer forgiveness, knowing that in forgiving we do not condone acts of violence. We do not forget those acts and the effects of the lives of men and women, children and families who are forever changed. But in forgiving, we give a gift to ourselves, a gift of life and the gift of hope for a future in which all people live in faith and in freedom. For those who grieve, give strength to move forward into each tomorrow. Allow your healing to cover each life touched by violence and to comfort each heart touched by grief. Grant that even as we uphold the laws of our land and govern under those laws, we will be a nation and a community that upholds the standards of justice, and in the face of injustice, we will continue to work. Grant us your grace and your mercy, for only in you may we find the peace that we seek. Bless the efforts of those who serve, who sacrifice, who go forth daily into the community and into the world. Go before them and lead them to a hope that is in you. Go with us all, granting us your wisdom as we continue to work for that freedom, that liberty, that equality that is this United States. Guide us in all that we do, now and forever. Amen.